For 3 days, I let the black folder sit on my desk. Thin enough to hide between books, silent enough to pretend it wasn't there. Yet heavy with something I had been both dreading and craving. Every morning I poured my coffee, pushed papers around it, made calls, stared out across the Mississippi River from the 72nd floor of my Memphis penthouse. But the folder stayed where it was, daring me to open it. On the 4th morning, I gave in. My hands trembled more than I wanted to admit as I lifted the cover. 6 pages. 1 grainy photograph. That was all. Yet my heart began pounding, like I was about to face a jury. The name printed in neat type stopped me cold. Daniel Marcus Whitfield. Age 29. My grandson. I pressed the folder shut for a moment, almost as if I could undo what ID just read. A grandson. I had imagined him for years, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in guilty whispers to myself, but never thought I'd actually see proof. The investigator's report was blunt, each line a dagger. Former factory worker, laid off, evicted, car repossessed. Residence, none. Dependents, 1 daughter, Lila, 16 months old. Current location, homeless encampment beneath an interstate bridge in Louisville, Kentucky. I read the next line twice before I could breathe. Parents, Marcus Whitfield and Vivian Cole. Estranged. My son's name looked foreign on the page, though it had lived in my veins once. 32 years earlier, Marcus had taken everything. He drained the family accounts, forged his father's signature, and vanished with Vivian. The night we discovered the theft, my husband, Henry, collapsed in his study, clutching his chest. The doctors called it natural causes. I knew better. He died of betrayal. That was the night the Whitfield house fell silent. The night I buried more than my husband. Marcus told the world I had died soon after. That was the easiest way to erase me. For decades, I let the lie stand. I built walls of marble and glass, hid in charity galas and company boardrooms, convinced myself isolation was safer than the wound reopening. And now, here it was, reopening anyway. A man with Henry's eyes was living beneath a bridge, cradling a sick baby. My blood, my legacy. The photo on the last page showed him from a distance, hunched under concrete with a bundle clutched to his chest. A tiny hand reached toward his face. I touched the paper as if I could feel the warmth of that little hand. 30 years of silence ended with that photograph. I closed the folder and pressed the intercom. Maria, have the jet prepared for tomorrow morning, and call Thomas. I'll meet a driver in Louisville. Yes. Mrs. Whitfield. Will anyone accompany you? No, I said. My voice was steady now. This is personal. I stood at the window, watching the brown river roll endlessly south. For decades, I had been a ghost in this city. Tomorrow, that ends. Louisville greeted me with rain. Heavy, relentless sheets that blurred the skyline into shadows. The driver, Thomas, glanced in the rearview mirror as the windshield wipers fought to keep up. Ma'am, are you sure this is the address? He asked carefully. I looked down at the folded slip of paper. The investigator had provided coordinates scribbled neatly in ink. Yes, I answered, though my voice betrayed the unease twisting in my stomach. The city gave way to broken streets, shuttered storefronts, and empty lots where businesses had once stood. The further east we drove, the more the weight of abandonment settled on my chest. I had walked neighborhoods like this once, long ago, searching for properties to invest in. But this wasn't business. This was blood. The car slowed near a massive overpass. Concrete pillars rising like tombstones. The roar of traffic thundered above. A sound that never stopped. A reminder of the world moving on, while forgotten lives struggled beneath. I could make out shapes huddled against the supports, tents, tarps, piles of scavenged belongings. A makeshift village hidden in plain sight. Thomas pulled onto the muddy shoulder, tires sinking into wet earth. He hesitated, his voice low. "Ma'am, this doesn't look safe. Allow me to go first." I shook my head. "No, this one is mine." The umbrella trembled in my hand as I stepped into the storm. The rain was deafening. The smell of wet earth, mixed with exhaust and despair. Each step sank into mud, soaking through my shoes. Then I heard it. A thin cry, weak, almost lost in the downpour. A baby. My pace quickened, careful not to slip on the slick ground. The tarp flapped in the wind, revealing the inside of a sagging tent. A man knelt inside, his back hunched, cradling something small and fragile wrapped in a worn blanket. His shoulders were sharp with hunger. His movements were gentle, desperate. "Daniel," I whispered before I could stop myself. He whipped around. His eyes were the same, deep brown I remembered from Henry, but guarded, suspicious. One arm clutched the baby tighter. The other braced against the ground as if ready to flee. "Who are you?" His voice was hoarse, broken from disuse or grief. I crouched to his level, rain soaking through my coat, my umbrella useless now. "My name is Eleanor Whitfield," I said softly. "I know your father told you I was dead, but I am your grandmother." His face hardened. "That's not possible. My grandparents are dead. Both sides." "Your father lied," I replied, steady though my chest ached. "I am very much alive." The baby whimpered, her tiny face flushed with fever. Daniel rocked her, his eyes darting between me and the storm outside. "What do you want? We don't have anything left to take." "I am not here to take anything," I said, lowering my umbrella completely. Rain poured over me, but I didn't flinch. "I am here because of her." I nodded at the child. "She needs a doctor." Daniel's jaw tightened. The already sent us away. They said Tylenol was enough. "She's been like this for days." His voice cracked. I leaned closer, my words calm but firm. "Come with me. 1 hour. We'll get her care. Then you can decide what happens next." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the storm. "Finally," he whispered. "Her name is Leela." I repeated it, letting the name settle on my tongue. "Lila. Your grandfather would have loved that." For the first time, Daniel's suspicion faltered. He looked at me with something almost like recognition. Then, slowly, he nodded. The suite smelled faintly of citrus polish and clean linen. Warmth wrapped around us the moment we stepped inside, a violent contrast to the cold rain still dripping from our clothes. Daniel clutched Lila so tightly, I wondered how she could breathe, though she was too weak to protest. Within minutes, the pediatrician I had arranged arrived. Dr. Monroe, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a voice that brooked no delay, examined the baby on the king-size bed. I stood near the window, pretending not to notice the way Daniel's whole body trembled as he watched. "She has pneumonia starting," Dr. Monroe said, stethoscope still pressed to the child's chest. "Not advanced yet, but serious if untreated. Antibiotics Fluids. Warmth. You caught this just in time. Relief and fear collided in Daniel's eyes. He stroked the damp curls on his daughter's head. "Shelby okay?" he asked, voice nearly breaking. "With care. Yes. She needs a stable environment. No more nights under bridges. Dr. Monroe packed her kit, her gaze flicking briefly to me as if to say, "Now it's on you." When she left, silence returned. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, holding Lila's hand as if anchoring himself to her. The room service tray, ID ordered, waited on the table stake. Soup, bread, enough to feed 3 men. He didn't move toward it until I lifted the baby into my arms. "Eat," I said. "It'll keep her safe." For a heartbeat, his pride flared. Then it cracked. He set the baby gently against me and crossed to the table. He ate with the ferocity of a man who hadn't seen real food in days. I kept my eyes on Lila, giving him dignity in his hunger. "Why are you doing this?" he asked finally, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His voice was wary, tired, but edged with suspicion. "Because you are my family," I answered simply. He shook his head. "My father said you abandoned us. Said you were gone long before I was born." Why would he lie? The question I had dreaded. I drew a slow breath. Marcus lied because the truth would have exposed him. He wanted control. He wanted you to need him and no one else. Daniel's jaw tightened. And my mother? He never talked about her either. Just said she left. That was the knife twist I had feared. The investigator's report had hinted at her disappearance, a mystery Marcus had buried. Daniel's eyes now demanded an answer. "I will tell you everything," I said carefully, "but not tonight. Tonight is for your daughter. When she is stronger. When you are rested. Well, speak of the past." He stared at me for a long moment, searching for deception. At last, he looked down at Lila, asleep in my arms, her tiny chest rising more steadily. 1 hour, he whispered. That was the deal. But maybe one more night. The jet touched down just after noon. From the window, the wide green stretches of Tennessee rolled beneath us, sunlight breaking through scattered clouds. Memphis looked brighter than I had seen it in years, though perhaps it was only because of the small bundle asleep across Daniel's chest. When the car pulled up the long gravel drive, Daniel's breath caught. The Whitfield estate had stood for nearly a century, white columns rising above the magnolia trees, verandas catching the afternoon light. To me, it had always been too empty, too silent. But to Daniel, I could see it was overwhelming. "This is where you live?" he asked quietly, adjusting Lila in his arms. "This is where your grandfather built his life," I corrected. Every stone was laid with a vision for family. I didn't add that for 30 years it had felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Inside, I led him past the echoing foyer, deliberately avoiding the grand ballroom and formal dining room. Too much grandeur, too many ghosts. Instead, I guided him to the east wing, where a guest house had been prepared. The rooms were warm, modest by comparison, furnished with fresh linens and a nursery stocked with clothes and formula. Daniel paused in the doorway of the nursery, staring at the crib and the rocking chair by the window. His throat worked as if words had caught there, but none came. "There are clothes for you in the dresser," I explained gently. "Basic things. Nothing fancy. And the kitchen is always open." He nodded, though his expression remained guarded. That evening, as Maria the nanny I had hired arrived to assist, I left them alone. Privacy I knew, was the only way Daniel could begin to trust. Yet, even from the main house, I felt their presence. For the first time in decades. Laughter not mine. Not Henry's seemed possible in these halls. But shadows followed. The second night. Daniel came to me after dinner, his brow furrowed. Someone was outside the gates, he said. A car, idling too long. When I looked, it drove off. A chill tightened my chest. Did you see who it was? No. But they were watching. I forced my voice calm. This estate has been in my family for generations. Curious people always circle. But I knew better. My son Marcus had eyes everywhere. And if he had learned Daniel was with me, he would not stay silent for long. Later that night, I sat in Henry's old study, staring at the portrait of him above the fireplace. His steady gaze seemed to ask what I intended to do. I whispered the only answer I had. Protect them, at all costs. By the fourth morning in Memphis, I noticed it, the restlessness. Daniel had settled into the guest house routine, walking the gardens with Leela in the stroller, eating meals quietly in the kitchen, reading books from Henry's old library. But there was an energy beneath his silence, a gnawing need for direction. I've been applying for warehouse jobs, he admitted over coffee, his voice low, almost embarrassed. There's a plant 20 miles from here, hiring night shifts. It's not much, but it's work. I studied him. His hands were calloused, his shoulders strong, but his eyes carried Henry's same quiet fire. Work is good, I said. But Daniel, have you thought about something more? He gave a humorless laugh. More? I've been living under a bridge. I set my cup down. At Whitfield Developments, we are looking for an assistant project coordinator. Entry level. Long hours. Little glory. But you would see how homes are built. Not just walls, but communities. I think you could be good at it. Suspicion flickered in his gaze. You mean because I am your grandson? No, I said firmly. Because you survived losing everything and still fought to protect your daughter. That gives you perspective no business degree can teach. And no one at the company knows who you are. You would apply like anyone else. Your success or failure would be your own. He hesitated, wrestling with pride and possibility. I don't want handouts. Neither did Henry, when he started with nothing but a hammer. I answered, this isn't a gift. It's an opportunity. That night, a scream shattered the quiet. I rushed across the courtyard to the guest house. Daniel stood in the doorway, his face pale, clutching Lila against his chest. On the floor behind him lay a single sheet of paper, soaked by the rain that had blown in through the broken window. Scrawled across it in thick black ink were 5 words, "You do not belong here." Daniel's voice shook. Someone broke in while we were sleeping. I heard the glass. They were gone before I could see. I picked up the paper with trembling hands. The message was crude, but the intent clear. Marcus. He had found us. Pack a bag for tonight. I told Daniel, you and Lila will stay in the main house. The guest house is no longer safe. He looked at me. Fear and defiance tangled in his expression. Why is he doing this? Why does my father hate you so much? I swallowed hard, pressing the note flat on the table. Because the truth, when it finally comes out, will ruin him. I held his gaze. And Daniel, the truth is closer than you think. 1 year later, Daniel no longer looked like the man I had found under a bridge. He carried himself straighter, his clothes no longer threadbare, but pressed with quiet pride. At Whitfield Developments, he had earned his way from the bottom rung, first pushing paperwork on zoning codes, then shadowing senior agents at open houses. Now, at just 30, he was a project manager trusted with his own team. What set him apart wasn't ambition. It was empathy. He listened, really listened to young couples worried about school districts, single mothers juggling 2 jobs, retired veterans seeking a modest place to rest. He didn't sell them houses. He built them futures. Just like Henry once had. The board began to notice. That Whitfield kid, one vice president muttered at a meeting, unaware of the truth of his name. He sees things the rest of us overlook. But success was not the only thing Daniel found. Late one evening, I returned to headquarters to collect a forgotten file. The building was mostly dark. The hum of the air conditioning, the only sound. Then I saw the light in Daniel's office. He was bent over a stack of boxes. Papers spread across his desk. His face was pale. These were buried in the archives, he said when I stepped inside. His voice was flat, as if drained. Files from 30 years ago. Look. He pushed a folder toward me. Inside were ledger sheets, wire transfers, notes in Marcus' handwriting. But what made my breath stop was a set of letters. They were addressed to me. The return address was from Chicago, 1992. They were signed by Elena Price. My pulse hammered. Elena, Daniel's mother. He stared at me, eyes sharp with demand. You knew her? I sank into the chair. Yes. Elena worked for Henry once, in acquisitions. Brilliant. Idealistic. She and Marcus married young. I didn't approve. But Henry, he adored her. Daniel's hands tightened on the desk edge. Then why did she disappear? He told me she abandoned me. I opened one of the letters. Elena's handwriting aching with desperation. Eleanor. I have proof Marcus is stealing from the company. I cannot stay silent. Please, if something happens to me, protect Daniel. My throat closed. She didn't abandon you, I whispered. She tried to stop him, and then she vanished. Daniel's voice was raw. Vanished how? Did my father? I gripped his hand. I don't know, but I feared as much. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper. The discovery was a wound reopened, sharper than before. Daniel shoved the papers back into the box. All this time, I thought she left me, and he let me believe it. His voice cracked, anger and grief twisting together. He destroyed her. He destroyed all of us. I wanted to tell him we could still make this right. But as the elevator chimed in the hall, a chill swept me. For deep down, I knew Marcus would never allow the truth to stay buried. The annual board meeting always carried a ritual weight. For 30 years, I had stood at the head of that polished oak table, reviewing charts, forecasting profits, repeating Henry's old mantra, we do not just build houses, we build futures. But this year was different. This year, I would hand that mantle to someone else. Daniel sat midway down the table, his notes neatly stacked, unaware of what was about to happen. At 30, he was the youngest project manager in the room. But his record spoke louder than age. The others respected him without knowing why. I rose from my seat, my cane tapping once against the marble floor. The chatter stilled. Colleagues, I began, letting my voice carry across the room. 30 years ago, Henry Whitfield laid the foundation of this company with a simple belief: families deserve more than roofs and walls. They deserve communities. For decades, I have searched for a successor who shares that vision, not someone who can read a balance sheet, but someone who understands the worth of a key in a child's hand. I paused. Faces leaned forward, expectant. Some imagined it would be them. My gaze drifted down the table until it landed on Daniel. I have found that successor, I said. Effective today. The new Chief Executive Officer of Whitfield Developments will be Daniel Whitfield. The silence was absolute. Daniel blinked, stunned, his pen falling from his hand. Around him, executives shifted from shock to calculation. A few nodded slowly. They had seen his work, his empathy, his results. This was not favoritism. It was earned. Daniel stood, unsteady, and as he passed me to take the head chair, he whispered, "Why me?" "Because you are Henry's legacy," I murmured, "and mine." He turned to face the room, his voice trembling but gaining strength as he spoke of affordable housing, of communities that lasted longer than profits. I watched pride bloom in the silence. For the first time in decades, I saw the future and did not fear it. Then the doors burst open. The receptionist hurried in, pale. "Mrs. Paskin never meant Whitfield," they insisted. Behind her strode Marcus and Vivian. Time seemed to slow. My son, grayer but still wearing that smug tilt of his chin, scanned the room with sharp eyes. Vivian clutched her purse like a weapon. "Daniel," Marcus barked, his voice echoing. "I am your father. We need to talk. Now." The boardroom froze. Daniel stiffened, every muscle taut. I stepped forward before he could speak. "No, Marcus, you and I will talk. In private." He smirked, but there was fear behind it. He remembered what I had survived, and he knew this time I was armed with more than grief. The confrontation that had been 3 decades in the making was about to begin. The conference room they led us into was small, its glass walls catching the late afternoon light. Marcus and Vivian sat on one side of the table, their posture stiff, defensive. I remained standing, cane in hand, watching them with the calm I had sharpened over 30 years. "You lied to me." Daniel's voice came from the doorway. He had followed, his face pale but burning. "You told me my grandmother was dead. You told me my mother abandoned me. And all this time you were the one who destroyed her." Marcus shifted, his confidence cracking. "Daniel, you don't understand. Your mother, she made mistakes." "No," I cut in. "She uncovered yours. We have her letters. She begged me to protect her son if anything happened. You silenced her, Marcus, and then you buried her memory." Vivian leaned forward, her tone sharp. "Enough of this melodrama. We came here because our son is now CEO, and as his parents, we deserve a say in how the family's assets are handled." The words were poison in my ears. I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the table. Inside were copies of the embezzlement files Daniel had found, Elena's letters, and legal papers prepared the night before. "This," I said, sliding the documents forward, "is a restraining order. You are prohibited from contacting Daniel or his daughter in any way. You are also barred from setting foot on Whitfield property." Marcus' face drained of color. "You can't do this. He's my son." Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "You forfeited that right the day you left me under a bridge with a sick baby and said no. You are nothing to me now." The silence that followed was thick and final. Vivian's mask cracked into fury. Marcus' shoulders sagged with defeat. I opened the door, and security waited. "Goodbye," I said, my voice level, "and do not come back." They left, their footsteps fading down the hall, the weight of 3 decades leaving with them. Months later, the groundbreaking of our newest development drew a crowd. Cameras clicked as Daniel lifted Lila onto his shoulders, her laughter ringing clear under the Memphis sun. The sign behind them read, "Whitfield Communities, building homes for every family." I stood nearby, no longer a ghost in marble halls, but a grandmother watching a legacy reborn. For years, I had thought survival meant silence, but Daniel and Lila taught me otherwise. Family is not about blood alone. It is about truth, about the hands that reach for you in the storm, and the courage to hold on. Sometimes you must cut away poisoned roots so new branches can grow strong. And for the first time in decades, standing under that bright Tennessee sky, I finally felt alive again.